Hi, everyone, and welcome to Between the Prompts, where AI meets research. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Lauren, and we're both researchers who are curious, sometimes skeptical, and often excited about how AI is showing up in research.
In each episode, we dive into a topic that's on our minds, and probably on yours too, whether you're a student, a faculty member, or just trying to make sense of all the AI buzz.
Today, we're talking about using AI at the beginning of the research process. We'll talk about developing research ideas and what role AI should play. We call this episode Brains or Bots.
All right, Lauren, which side are you on? Team Brains or Team Bots?
Vanessa, you know I'm on Team Brains, but I'm really interested to see where the bots come into play here.
And what happens if Team Brains marries Team Bots? And what kind of kids do they have? I guess that's the big question we're looking at today overall, isn't it?
Exactly. That's what we're trying to answer.
All right, so let's dive in. I think our first big question of the day is, what does it mean to be original in an AI-influenced research landscape? What's going on when we go to AI and ask it to help us with developing research ideas?
So I think one thing that's really interesting to consider is, can AI remix existing ideas? So what counts as novel at this point? So essentially, when we think about AI, it's really making connections. And we need those potential connections to be further developed. So there's still a lot of work on the side of the researcher as being an innovator here and actually coming up with this novel research idea.
I think novel is one of those ideas that we use to put a lot of pressure on ourselves in general, that there's always got to be something new. Because if I want to take AI out of this equation for a moment, I think that there are all sorts of times where 2, 3, or more people end up coming up with the same idea or coming to the same conclusion on their own. I mean, nothing's really truly novel, so it's not surprising that we have to ask this question when we're talking about AI. It has a lot of human-generated ideas that have been fed into its system, and now it's just remixing and connecting them in different ways. I'm trying to refrain from saying new ways or novel ways, because who's to say that they're actually new or novel ways? When I wake up this morning and I think, oh, let me mix peanut butter and chocolate, that's been done for years, but it might be new to me. And I think that's part of this challenge when we talk about originality and novelty in research.
Ooh, I love that, Vanessa. That's actually a really great point. So shifting gears a little bit, I'm interested to know, are we seeing more derivative work masked as innovation by using AI to generate research questions?
Oh, that's a fabulous one. I hear so many people saying that they are using AI to produce more work right now, that their output will be higher this year because they've been using AI. I'm never sure exactly what they're doing with AI that's going to be boosting the work that they're putting out, and if they're using it to generate the ideas for what they should do, if it's creating derivative work or innovative work. I mean, I think there are so many things that create derivative work right now that it's hard to point the finger straight at AI. I think the pressure to publish is tremendous right now, and that has led people to try to conduct as many studies as they can and publish as many things as they possibly can. And that right there leads to derivative work, just because we're considering ways that we can compress the amount of time that it takes to do research. And doing research takes time. Each study takes time. AI can help compress time for so many tasks, but, is it going to be innovative? I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, and while we're on that topic of not so sure about innovation, I think we need to consider that smoke and mirrors effect with AI. A lot of people say, well, AI did it, so it must be amazing and innovative, but that's not always true. We always have to think about that black box problem. We know the input and we see the output. We don't know what's going on in the middle. We don't know how it's really generating what it's generating. So is it innovation? I don't know.
I think it's also getting confused with the idea of using a new technology as being innovative. So is it the research itself that we're considering innovative, or is it the way that we're approaching the process of doing the research that's innovative? Is it our new partner in research that is the innovation, not the actual research that we're doing?
So how do we ensure our research questions are grounded in authentic inquiry and not just AI output?
I am personally just a big fan of the good old sniff test. It applies in so many parts of life. How do you know if the research isn't good? Take a look at it with your own eyes, with your own brain, not with the bot. If you are a good researcher, you are able to judge these things. I think that this becomes even more important for us in the age of AI. This could be considered a controversial statement as everybody complains about peer review processes and are peer reviewers any good? Are peer reviewers putting sufficient effort into the process? But this is where we really need those good human reviewers to take a look at everything and offer up their judgment. We can tell what AI output looks like. If it's pure AI output, it's pretty clear. I've played around. I've asked things like, give me some research questions on a topic just to see where it would go. And I get questions that have been done before. I get questions that are pretty meaningless. Like I almost want to go open up my AI buddy right now and just say, what should I research on this topic? Give me some ideas. Actually, I'll do it right now. I'm going to say, give me some research questions I might study if looking at, let's say, student trust in AI tools. How's that for a topic?
That's perfect.
Great. All right, so I gave it the topic. How does prior experience with AI tools affect student trust in accuracy and fairness? How does transparency about how AI tools work impact student trust? Now, all of this is going to be meaningless if it's not situated in an actual problem.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think actually this brings us to our next big question this episode, which is how is AI shaping what gets researched and what gets ignored? The most powerful AI models out right now are almost entirely from private companies, not from universities. These tech giants are really the ones setting benchmarks. They are literally defining what problems an entire field can work on and prioritizing what's commercially viable, not necessarily what serves the public interest. Can academia even compete with that anymore? The universities that are doing a lot of this research may not necessarily have the computing power or resources to build these cutting edge AI systems. Researchers are becoming more dependent on tools built by corporations using data and priority chosen by those corporations.
I think that's a concern we really need to bring forward. It's one of those unseen things right now that we're not questioning enough. Where are these connections coming from that are being put forward to us through our AI tools? How is it that we got this as a response as opposed to that as a response? We've heard about the power of social media and the algorithm to change the outcomes of election and to change people's beliefs on a particular topic. So we know that the capacity to do that is there. And if it swings back into the research side of things, I think that's going to be really scary. My hope is that we always go back to the human. I think that what's so powerful about human-generated research is that genuine wondering that sits behind it, that thought struggle that sits behind it, the passion and the curiosity that sits behind it. And I don't think AI has passion. I don't think AI has curiosity. It is simply moving forward based on patterns and prompts. When I talk to researchers about what they study and why they study it, they start to tell stories about how they got there. There's always something that connects to the work that they do. They're telling me that they had this experience as a child, gave them a sense of awe and wonder about this topic, or they're committed to studying people who are very much like somebody they care about deeply in their personal life. That's what drives our research. We want to understand the parts of the world that have made us scratch our heads for a while, or we want to change the world and make it better for the people who we care about. That's the important human part. If we're letting AI and companies drive it, we've lost everything about who we are.
Yeah, and that's some advice I often give to doctoral students when they're trying to decide on their topic for their dissertation. What's something that's going to sustain you? You're working on this project for a long period of time, and it's something that you have to remain passionate about. Otherwise, you may not finish, or you may get to that point where you throw your hands up in the air and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's got to be something that gives you some sort of inspiration, right?
But, that makes me think, here's something that I'll say that's on the side of team bots and how AI is shaping what gets researched, maybe not what gets ignored. I have noticed with my own university secure AI system that I am using, it gets to know me. It knows the kinds of things I'm searching for, the different topics, et cetera. And so if I have a little bit of a brainstorming sesh with it, it starts to connect topics that I'm interested in. And it's like, who stuck the chocolate in my peanut butter? Well, I had the chocolate and the peanut butter sitting right there in the first place, and it suggested that I might mix it together. So I've noticed at times where it suggested mixing strands of my research together, and that I have found fascinating. And I've had to use my brain, so team brains here, to figure out what to do with it. But it started to help me with making and seeing that broader connection.
Absolutely. Well, there's another layer that I do want to address here, which is bias. These models are trained on data that reflects existing biases and priorities. So if the training data overrepresents certain populations, certain perspectives, then AI tools will naturally direct research towards questions that matter to those groups while marginalizing others. We're essentially encoding whose knowledge counts in the very tools we're using to generate new knowledge.
And I do worry about that as we think about the need to have research that is truly representative of the context in which it's situated. If we're shifting from one country to another, for example, we know that what works in one place may not work in another. We're talking about educational research, right? The educational systems themselves are different. The policies are different. All of this is going to shape what is possible and what is not possible in that setting. And if AI hasn't been sufficiently trained on information from that area or current enough information from that area, then we could run into some problems. Also on the human side, if the human doesn't know to prompt in specific ways and just does this generic, I'm doing research on this topic, AI may assume a location or not even care about a location. My AI probably knows that I'm sitting here in Florida, United States, but maybe it doesn't know. Maybe it doesn't know that I'm going to Southeast Asia to implement some stuff and do some research on it next summer. If I don't tell it that, it's going to give me responses that are very North American.
Absolutely. Well, moving into our next question for this episode, how do we critically evaluate AI as a research partner? Do we even want to call it a partner? Is it a tool? Is it a collaborator? Is it a co-author? What should we even be calling it?
There are no consequences for AI when it lets us down. The consequences are all for the human being. That also connects to the choices. The choices are all made by the human being as well. It's really all on our shoulders. So what can we expect of AI? I keep going back to what limited regulation we have right now, like knowing from journals that AI cannot be a co-author. It can't be a co-author because it can't consent. And it can't take responsibility for the work that it's done. So if I think about it from that standpoint, then I'm really back to looking at it as a tool. And then it comes back to, is it a good tool? And did I use the tool effectively? But it's all about my choice to use it as a tool and my ability to use that tool.
So I'm actually interested in your perspective, not only as a researcher and someone who publishes a lot, but you've also done a lot of work as a journal editor. Should researchers disclose when AI substantially shapes an idea? And what does that look like?
I don't think we know right now. I struggle with that from the perspective of, at what point does it all end? Are we going to be falling all over ourselves with ridiculousness? I'm going to go to a different point in the research process. As an example, at the very end, and you're writing it all up, and then you're polishing it off. Do you use Grammarly or a similar tool to help you out? Or do you use a human editor? I could use a human editor and not need to declare it necessarily, or I could put it into Grammarly and then do I need to declare it? And how much do I need to declare it? Where do you draw the line? So now let's go back to this idea part. Where do you draw the line and what are the parallels if I were looking to a human for the same purpose? You're my colleague. I could sit here and have a conversation with you about the next study that I'm planning. And I'll go back to how the AI is giving me some new ideas about connecting things that I've already worked on. I could be saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing this study next and I'm looking at X, Y, and Z. And you could say, oh, and are you connecting in the work that you've done on PQR also? And maybe I hadn't thought to connect it before, but oh, you gave me an idea in that moment. And then I take it and I run with it. And it was just a moment of our conversation. Do I need to declare that in research? I don't know. Or maybe I'm sitting there in a conference session and I'm seeing that somebody is using the small stories approach, for example. This is something that happened for me in the last year or so. And I was like, I want to hear more about that. I want to learn more about that. And that moment tipped it off. And then I started doing some digging on my own and figuring some things out. Is that something that I need to be putting into acknowledgements now? Like, at what point does it become something that you really acknowledge? It's not like we're having hour-long conversations every week to guide my research. You just said one thing and it tipped me off.
That's actually a really interesting point. And I think about it even from that peer review perspective. So when you submit a journal article and you do get that feedback from your peer reviewers, I've had instances where I've gotten such great feedback that I'm like, oh yeah, I've really got to incorporate this. This is really going to help push this idea forward. I don't know who that person is. How can I even give them credit for helping to shape this paper that I wrote? That's a really interesting thought.
Yeah. So now if you get it from AI, what do you do with it? Are we supposed to acknowledge it? I mean, of course, that's very different from sitting there and saying, hey, AI, what should I study? Having it push all of your ideas forward, then maybe it is something that you need to acknowledge. But then maybe you should also be questioning what you're doing as a researcher if you're not starting with your own baseline ideas and able to flesh them out on your own.
Absolutely.
So, Lauren, what do you think are the big questions that are still sitting ahead of us for the future of research ideation in the age of AI?
Well, we've narrowed it down to a small number that people can chew on as they finish out this episode. So first, will AI narrow or expand the scope of inquiry? I think that's been the topic of what we've been talking about today. What does that look like? How do we teach the next generation of researchers to generate research topics? Given the advances in AI and how quickly it's evolving, I don't know what that's even going to look like in 5 years.
I want to jump in on that one. I'm a little bit worried about that as I see people chasing trends and saying, should I be an AI researcher right now? Well, why? Because it's a trend, because I want to get a job. Just teaching people to follow trends and AI can give them the trends. Are they going to learn what they need to learn about really thinking and following their passion and turning their passion into a project?
Exactly. It's really kind of teaching them to really chase the problem or the opportunity. What is it that they're trying to do? Not what technology or tool is amazing and that's what they're chasing at the time. I totally agree. So some of the other questions that we came up with was, what does AI use at this phase of research do to curiosity? I think that's a really interesting question. And not just curiosity, but creativity. I think there's a lot of conversations around that these days.
It can go either way.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely something to think about. How will the rest of the world respond? Journals, big tech, funding agencies, the general public. What do you think?
I think I don't know yet. And I'm going to come back again to then how do we acknowledge the role that AI is playing in this process? These are going to be ongoing conversations. Team brains, team bots, the brains are going to be important. If we try to hand the brain work over to the bots entirely, we're compromising some of what's really important as humans, some of what's really important to society, some of where innovation comes from. Although at the same time, I acknowledge that team bots can also bring innovation, make new connections, and do some tasks with great efficiency and effectiveness. So we don't want to overlook that ability for a boost. So I don't know, brains plus bots equals boost?
I'm still team brains at this point. I'm not fully convinced.
I'm holding on to my brain. I'm not letting it go, and I'm not letting the bot take over.
Exactly. I think that's the perfect way to leave it.
All right. So we're firm on that with ideas and where the research concepts are coming from. Where do we go next, Lauren?
Next, we are going to take it to instrument development. We're going to explore how researchers can use AI to develop different instruments for data collection.
Oh, I can't wait to have that conversation. We'll see you next time on Between the Prompts, AI and Research.